Have you ever found yourself in one of those incredibly high stakes, just absolute pressure cooker
Yeah,
environments?
like a grueling grad school program or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or, a massive make or break work project where literally everyone is just running on fumes and, well, way too much caffeine.
Right, yeah, the classic burnout recipe.
Exactly. And if you have been there, you might have noticed something kind of strange about how people connect in those spaces.
It's dense.
It is that intense pressure. It doesn't just stress you out. It actually acts like an emotional accelerant. It strips away all our normal, carefully constructed personal walls and just forces these unexpected, almost immediate
Oh,
bonds.
absolutely. It's fascinating.
And well, that is exactly what we are exploring today. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are jumping into excerpts from the opening chapters of Chetan Bhagat's wildly successful novel, Two States, The Story of My Marriage.
A really phenomenal source text for this topic, honestly.
It really is. And our mission for this deep dive is to analyze how the author uses the hyper-competitive, just ruthless environment of an elite Indian business school to set the perfect psychological stage for a cross-cultural romance.
Which is such a specific and high-stress setting.
Right. We're going to examine the underlying mechanics of how academic stress, massive cultural assumptions, and heavy family baggage all violently collide.
Basically turning two unlikely classmates from just friends into lovers. I
Exactly.
mean, it is a fascinating psychological petri dish. Because when you isolate young, highly ambitious people in an environment that demands, absolute perfection, their coping mechanisms become incredibly raw.
Yeah, they really do.
The source material doesn't offer a standard romance. It provides this really profound study in survival through connection. We are basically looking at the sociology of trauma bonding, but within an institutional framework.
Yeah, and the narrative brilliantly sets those emotional stakes right up front. Like, we don't start with a romantic gaze across a crowded room.
No, not at all.
We actually begin on a therapist's couch. Our narrator, Krish, is sitting in the office of a psychotherapist, Dr. Nita Iyer. And he is sleep-deprived, deliberately starving himself, and literally Googling ways to end his own life over a devastating breakup with a girl named Ananya from Mylapore.
It's bleak.
It's so bleak. Starting at this chronological endpoint is just a masterstroke, though, because before we even witness their very first interaction, we know the immense psychological toll this relationship is going to exact on him. We know it breaks him.
It does. It establishes the structural weight of the whole story. It signals to you, the listener, not to be fooled by the witty banter you are about to encounter, because the underlying currents are, well, they're dangerous.
Yeah, completely.
Furthermore, the framing device itself is loaded. The therapist, Dr. Iyer, is a brilliant South Indian woman with Ivy League credentials.
Right.
So her mere presence forces Krish and the audience really to immediately confront the dense cultural complexities that triggered his psychological collapse in the first place.
And that structural weight carries right into his memory of their very first meeting. Because Krish's mind flashes back from that bleak therapist clinic to the mess hall at IIMA.
Which sounds awful, by the way.
Oh, the way this campus is described is totally jarring. It is this testosterone-heavy, estrogen-starved ecosystem where female students are valued exclusively for their mathematical output.
Right, it's so clinical.
And into this highly sterile, functional machinery walks Ananya Swaminathan, a Tamil Brahmin who has already been unofficially anointed by the male student body as the best girl in the fresher batch.
The contrast there is stark, and it's definitely intentional. You have this institution functioning on a deeply ingrained scarcity mindset.
Everything is scarce.
Exactly.
Right.
Everything within those walls is heavily rationed. Good grades, sleep, joy, and especially food. The architecture and the daily schedule are basically designed to strip away individuality.
Yeah.
And then you have an individual who simply refuses to participate in that shared misery.
Okay, let's unpack this because their meet-cute hinges entirely on her refusal to be miserable.
Right, the lunch line scene.
Yes, we are in the lunch line. The bored kitchen staff are slopping this dark yellow food onto plates like some sort of prison assembly line, and Ananya reaches the front and just halts the entire operation.
It just stops it all.
She inspects the food, argues with the worker that it is a literal insult to Rassam, and demands extra rascalas to compensate for the dismal main course.
But the dessert is strictly rationed to one per student.
Right, exactly. The worker denies her. And this is where Krish steps in. He tells the worker to give his single precious rasgulla to Ananya.
Wow.
And you have to realize, Giving up your only dessert in a soul-crushing hostile mess hall isn't just a polite gesture. It is like offering a high-stakes diplomatic peace offering in the middle of a war zone.
That's a great way to put it.
It is a massive concession of the only joy available to him in that place.
Well, it's the only currency he possesses in that exact moment. What's fascinating here is the sheer mechanics of the setting clashing with human agency.
Yeah.
The institution is designed to be functional and joyless. Yet a profound human spark is generated entirely by Ananya's refusal to internalize that institutional deprivation. She demands pleasure in a space explicitly engineered for pain.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
And Krish, recognizing that rebellion and funding it with his own ration, is what actually bonds them.
But I have to push back a little on Krish's internal monologue leading up to that exact moment.
Oh yeah, the strategy he used.
Right, because before he surrenders the dessert, he notices her beauty and actually decides his optimal strategy is, quote, studied ignorance.
Yes.
Why does a supposedly highly intelligent guy, an IIT graduate, deduce that ignoring a beautiful woman is the master key to getting her attention?
Well, it exposes a classic defense mechanism, one that's super prevalent among the academically gifted but socially insecure. He operates on algorithmic thinking.
Oh, interesting.
He calculates that she's inundated with attention, which is accurate, right? And computes that the only variable that will differentiate him from the baseline data set is negating her primary asset.
So treating her like she's not beautiful.
Exactly. If the entire room is staring at her, looking away becomes an act of disruption. It's a highly calculated risk. Fortunately for him, his fundamental human empathy, or perhaps just his appetite for connection, overrides his faulty social algorithm. He hands over the rescula.
And the disruption actually works. She invites him to sit. However, this shared defiance of the mess hall immediately pushes them into navigating who they are outside of it.
Because they can't stand the campus food.
Right. They decide it's a lost cause and venture out for their first lunch off campus to a restaurant called Topaz.
Topaz.
Yeah. It's a rather soulless, air-conditioned establishment playing instrumental Hindi songs. But this is where their ingrained regional assumptions violently collide.
Yeah, the transition from the campus to Topaz serves as a really nice bridge from institutional scarcity to cultural subversion. Bhagat leans heavily into established regional assumptions to quickly generate comedic tension and establish their character dynamics.
Because Krish assumes things about her.
Right. Krish operates on the assumption that Ananya, being a Tamil Brahmin from Chennai, will be the purest of pure vegetarians, steeped in traditional conservatism.
Yeah, he assumes she will fit neatly into this predetermined box. I mean, they're sitting in Gujarat, a dry state, and Ananya casually asks the waiter for a beer and gleefully devours a half-canduri chicken.
She just goes for it.
She shatters his entire mental model of her identity within, like, 5 minutes of leaving campus.
She really subverts his expectations to aggressively dictate the terms of their interaction. By shattering the cultural stereotype, she removes his ability to categorize her, which forces him onto the back foot.
Yeah, totally throws him off balance.
Exactly. She is establishing herself as an unpredictable variable. And she escalates this by dropping a staggering piece of information regarding the campus social dynamics.
Oh, the proposals. Yeah, she casually mentions that in her single week on campus, she has already received 10 proposals from their classmates.
10 in a week.
And all of them from socially awkward Idishans, including one guy who skipped dating entirely and went straight to a marriage proposal.
It acts as a startling metric of the social desperation permeating the student body, honestly. The gender ratio and the high-pressure environment just completely warp standard social timelines.
Right. And I want you, the listener, to really think about the psychology behind her sharing this specific metric. Is Ananya boasting about these 10 proposals as a calculated defense mechanism to ward off yet another overly aggressive suitor? Or is this just unfiltered arrogance from someone highly accustomed to dominating the social marketplace?
Well, it functions beautifully as both, actually, creating a deeply layered interaction. On an economic level, which these characters would totally appreciate, she is establishing her market value. She is signaling high demand.
Makes sense.
Functionally, however, it is an aggressive boundary-setting maneuver. She is preemptively categorizing Krish's potential behavior. By listing the failures of the other men, she puts him in the safe zone and demands a strict, quote, just friends pact.
And to solidify this contract, she insists they split the Topaz bill 60-60.
Right. She forces him to pay for his own chicken, firmly cementing the friend zone architecture.
But that carefully constructed boundary faces an immediate, violent stress test courtesy of the ruthless academic environment they share.
Oh, the classroom scene.
Yeah, here's where it gets really interesting. The entire power dynamic of their fledgling relationship completely flips during a single brutal classroom session.
The narrative moves us into a microeconomics class helmed by a 20-year veteran, Professor Chatterjee, and we see an immediate shift from the social arena back to the academic meat grinder.
Meat grinder is the perfect word for it.
This classroom is not designed for nurturing intellect at all. It is structured for pedagogical sadism.
Totally. Professor Chatterjee asks the class for the specific calculus-based formula for a marginal utility curve, and Ananya, who holds a gold medal in economics from Delhi University, raises her hand.
Right, she knows the concept.
Yes, she understands the conceptual framework perfectly, how a consumer evaluates different bundles of goods. But she lacks the obscure rote calculus formula Chatterjee is demanding.
And Chatterjee just seizes the opportunity for absolute public humiliation.
He's brutal.
He doesn't merely correct a gap in her mathematical knowledge. He weaponizes her failure. He grandstands, claiming that supposed top-tier graduates like her are the root cause of India's economic backwardness.
Which is just an insane leap.
It is. He throws his chalk down, effectively declaring Ananya Swaminathan a national failure right in front of her peers.
The cruelty is visceral. You watch Ananya, this previously untouchable campus queen who had men proposing to her literally days prior, just shatter. She sits in her chair, silently weeping, dabbing her eyes with a yellow dupatta.
Oh, the detail with the bells.
Yes. Fagat includes this devastating detail where she has to carefully hold the little tinkling bells on the ends of the dupatta so they don't make noise while she cries in class.
It's so sad.
It strips away all her social armor. Suddenly, she is incredibly vulnerable, and Krish, the engineer, who basically considers algebra his second language, steps into the breach.
This scene really exposes a profound systemic critique woven into the narrative. As Ananya points out later, these institutions often take nuanced, beautiful liberal arts subjects like economics and degrade them into a, quote, Greek symbol junkyard.
Yeah, that's such a harsh but true description.
They prioritize sterile, mathematical rote learning over deep conceptual understanding. It's basically an initiation rite disguised as education. But on an interpersonal level, this shared institutional trauma becomes the binding agent for Krish and Ananya.
Yeah, it's like, well, a pressure cooker works by trapping steam to force heat into the food faster than boiling, right? That's exactly what IMETA does to human connection here. It trapped the intense academic stress so tightly that intimacy is forced to develop at an accelerated rate just to release the emotional steam. Krish offers to tutor her.
But with conditions.
Right. He explicitly promises he has no intention of becoming suitor number 11. It is purely an alliance for academic survival. She accepts, and they begin spending hours together in her dorm room.
Which naturally leads to complications.
Of course. This forced physical proximity begins exposing the invisible baggage they both carry.
Well, you cannot sit in silence with someone for hours every night without observing the architecture of their life. And for Ananya, that architecture is highly visible. It is pinned directly to her dorm room wall.
Her photo board. It acts almost like a panopticon. Krish sits there studying, constantly aware of her family's gaze.
It's intimidating just reading about it.
Right. There's her father, who embodies the strict bank manager persona. There's her younger brother, whom Krish humorously labels an Aichen embryo, a kid already being molded for the engineering pipeline.
And then there's the mother.
Yes. The centerpiece is her mother. A woman whose photographs exude such terrifying, unsmiling strictness that Krish feels profound guilt merely existing in the same room as her image.
The photo board creates this tangible, physical presence of immense parental expectation looming over their study sessions. Ananya confesses the friction. She wishes for a better relationship with a mother who views her daughter's independence and ambition as liabilities.
Yeah.
Krish's family dynamics, conversely, are heavy precisely because they are shrouded in silence.
Rough.
He actively refuses to discuss them.
The juxtaposition is just brilliant. Her family trauma is a public exhibit. His is a locked vault. And this becomes glaringly apparent when they walk to the STD phone booth outside campus.
Oh, the phone call scene.
Yes, Krish dials his home number, his father answers the line, and Krish just stands there holding the receiver, breathing in total silence.
Right.
He lets the expensive long-distance meter run, click after click, listening to his father repeatedly say hello until he finally hangs up.
It is a breathtakingly passive-aggressive exertion of power. In an environment where he has almost zero control over his life, he manufactures control by intentionally withholding his voice.
It is the equivalent of paying a massive emotional tax. I mean, he is willingly spending his highly limited student budget, accepting a harsh financial penalty, purely to execute and carry this unresolved family anger.
Yeah, he takes the hit just to hurt him.
He pays the penalty, hangs up, and immediately calls back to speak exclusively to his mother, ensuring his father knows the silence was fully targeted.
This raises an important question about the hidden engines of ambition driving these students. On the walk back to the dorms, Krish lets his guard drop, just a fraction. He reveals to Ananya that his core drive isn't to climb the corporate ladder or amass massive wealth.
Which is what everyone else there wants.
Exactly. His actual dream is to be a writer. Yeah. He wants to craft stories that provoke actual societal change.
And she validates that dream. She doesn't mock him at all. It reveals how much of the relentless drive we see in this elite capitalist pressure cooker is actually fueled by deeply private rebellions.
They're running from things.
Yes. Krish is desperate to escape his father's reality, while Ananya is navigating the suffocating weight of her mother's traditional expectations. All of this heavy psychological machinery is operating right under the surface as they spend every waking minute together.
Yeah.
And this dense layering of academic stress, shared vulnerability, and rebellion eventually pushes the Just Friends pact to its absolute breaking point.
Well, the intellectual partnership fundamentally cannot contain their biological reality. The stress requires an outlet, and the proximity makes them the most viable targets for each other's displaced anxiety.
And you see the fractures start appearing over grades and clothing? Ananya scores a B+ on a quiz while Krish pulls an A. Suddenly, the academic power dynamic shifts, and Krish uses it as leverage.
Right, the tea stall incident.
They are preparing to visit the Ramhai tea stall off campus, and Ananya is wearing denim shorts. Krish immediately attempts to police her outfit, insisting she change because people outside the campus bubble will stare at her.
And she doesn't take that well.
Not at all. Ananya rightfully eviscerates him, fiercely defending her bodily autonomy and independence as an adult woman.
She accurately diagnoses that he is severely overstepping the Just Friends boundary. He is attempting to exert proprietary control over her physical presentation to the outside world. When the academic boundary shifts, he tries to solidify a different kind of authority.
I look at that scene, though, and wonder about his true motivation. Is Krish genuinely altruistically trying to protect her from the reality of off-campus harassment? Or is this policing simply his latent possessiveness leaking out because he lacks the actual relationship status to claim her?
It's entirely psychological projection. He is deeply frustrated by the rigid parameters of their platonic contract. He cannot control his own academic fate against professors like Chatterjee, and he cannot control his romantic status with Ananya, so his anxiety basically manifests as controlling behavior regarding her clothes.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yet he projects his own intense repressed fixation on her onto the hypothetical off-campus crowd. And this simmering frustration finally boils over spectacularly in his dorm room.
Oh, the climax of this part of the story. It results in the ultimate collision between their sterile academic environment and their messy emotional reality. They're pulling a late-night study session in his room, analyzing a human resources case study on a company called Nirdosh, which manufactures nicotine-free cigarettes.
Bhagat's use of the Nirdosh case as a thematic metaphor is exceptionally clever here. They're intensely debating a product designed to look and act like a cigarette, but which fundamentally lacks the core, satisfying substance the user actually craves.
Wow, yes.
It perfectly mirrors their friendship. It has the shape of intimacy, but lacks the physical reality they both desperately desire. They're attempting to intellectualize concepts like market share and HR strategies while being entirely besieged by irrational human hormones.
And Krish just reaches his limit. He throws the textbook down and shatters the pact. He delivers this desperate, raw speech explaining the agony of employing double self-control.
Right.
He tells her he has to force his brain to care about nicotine-free cigarettes while simultaneously forcing his eyes not to stare at her face. He confesses his love using the exact corporate vocabulary they've been studying, stating that the tiny mole on her lip currently commands a, quote, 50% market share of his entire consciousness.
It highlights how deeply the institution has infiltrated their minds, really. Business terminology is the only vocabulary left that feels safe enough to risk vulnerability, yet the raw emotion driving the speech is entirely anti-corporate.
And Ananya's reaction is just iconic. She bypasses the vocabulary entirely. She leans across the space and kisses him for exactly 3 seconds.
Just 3 seconds.
Yeah, and Bhagat notes her lips taste like the fruity mango juice she brought with her. It is an impulsive, system-shocking moment that absolutely annihilates the friend zone contract. She then immediately flees the room, leaving Krish totally paralyzed in the aftermath.
It is a euphoric, necessary release of the steam we discussed earlier. However, as the narrative progresses, that initial euphoria crashes headlong into the highly complicated logistics of sustaining a relationship within this panopticon.
Because the pressure cooker doesn't turn off just because they kissed.
Exactly.
They eventually sleep together, which is a scene that involves the humorous but very necessary step of physically hiding the glaring photograph of Ananya's strict mother.
You'd have to, really.
Yeah. Following that, Ananya practically colonizes Krish's dorm room. She brings in her electric kettle, the ultimate symbol of hostile domesticity.
Oh, the kettle changes everything.
It does. She institutes a hyper-organized daily routine of studying, sharing meals, and orchestrating a complex system of passing secret notes during lectures via a chain of classmates.
But the psychological shadows, the invisible family trauma, and the glaring photo board finally converge on their shared future. Post-sex, during a moment of profound, unguarded vulnerability, Ananya questions Krish about his past. She asks if he left a girlfriend behind at IIT.
And Krish confesses the secret he has been guarding. He did have a girlfriend. She was the daughter of an IIT professor, but he lost her, not due to a lack of love, but because of his own cowardice.
Right.
He was terrified to stand up to her powerful father, so he accepted a silent, devastating compromise. He secured his engineering degree, but he surrendered the relationship.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Bhagat is delivering a masterclass in narrative foreshadowing here. Krish is confessing a historical failure of immense thematic importance. He already failed once to fight an intimidating traditional father figure.
Yeah.
This revelation deeply spooks Ananya. The reality sets in, and she reminds him that her own parents are incredibly conservative and strict too.
The implication hits them both instantly. If Krish lacked the courage to fight one academic father figure for his past relationship, how on earth is he going to find the strength to battle her deeply traditional Kamal Brahmin family?
It's a huge hurdle.
They exchange their first I love yous in the shadow of this revelation, but it isn't a triumphant cinematic victory. The impending threat of their respective families hangs so heavy in the air you can practically hear the tinkling bells of her dupatta.
The stakes have exponentially escalated. It is no longer just about surviving Professor Chatterjee's microeconomics class. To keep Ananya, Krish is eventually going to have to engage in full-scale familial warfare against two deeply entrenched, culturally opposing families.
So what does this all mean? Let's distill the mechanics of what we've analyzed today. The foundation of Krish and Ananya's romance wasn't built in a vacuum, and it wasn't born of simple attraction. It was forged in a highly specific crucible.
The perfect storm, really.
You take the scarcity mindset of an elite institution, add intense academic humiliation, stir in severe sleep deprivation, and ignite it with a mutual, private rebellion against suffocating family expectations.
The campus served as an emotional incubator. The systemic stress stripped away their protective social algorithms, forcing a Punjabi engineer and a Tamil economics prodigy to bypass their cultural programming and connect on a primal human level over awful mess hall food and weaponized calculus.
That dynamic is something you see play out in the real world constantly, too. Think about your own life. Think about the people you've trauma bonded with during a brutal finals week or in the trenches of a failing startup.
Oh, definitely.
We share our limited resources, we share our profound anxieties, and suddenly we are deeply tethered to people we might never have even spoken to in a comfortable environment.
It accelerates intimacy because, in those environments, vulnerability ceases to be a choice. It becomes an absolute requirement for psychological survival.
But I want to leave you with a provocative thought to mull over today, one that extends well beyond the borders of the campus. If love can blossom so rapidly and with such fierce intensity inside a highly pressurized, isolated bubble, what happens the exact moment that bubble inevitably pops? Are these bubble relationships fundamentally built on nothing more than shared trauma and forced proximity? And if they are, can a bond forged in the fires of academic rebellion actually survive the mundane, traditional, everyday pressures of the real world, like, say, sitting down to dinner with the in-laws for the very first time? Think about the structural integrity of your own bonds the next time you find yourself connecting in the trenches. Until next time, thanks for taking this deep dive with us.